is Gordon Hall, and this is my true recurring accident. In November 1989 at 1:32 in the morning, I had just closed one of the two restaurants I was managing in Laguna Beach. I was heading home on my usual route, which was a service road back streets of Laguna, when a quarter-ton truck made an illegal left-hand turn in front of me. Police report said that the impact was at 55 miles an hour. I was rushed to an emergency. I had sustained multi-trauma injuries. My head, neck, back, groin, fractured both sides of my pelvic. I think the doctor said I had broken a total of 113 bones, broken or fractured, 113 bones. This story is probably a half hour long, and I know I've got to make it short, so I'm just going to give you the highlights. When mother was first called, she showed up at the hospital with my brother. My brother threw up. They wheeled me into a private room where my mother and brother talked with me for a few minutes, and they had left, and I was left with the doctor, and the doctor explained that I had lost the use of my right arm, my dominant arm. I had broken, like I said, 113 bones. Head trauma I had sustained, and they were not sure what the extent of that was. Only time would tell. I later found out that the reason my mother and brother had left was they had been told to get the family together to come and say their goodbyes. I wasn't expected to make it. I made it. A survivor. One of the first regulations, I can't even speak right now, that I had was seeing an ambulance, but I was above it at about, say maybe 100, 200 feet above it. To the left was a dark silver 450 SL. I remembered that because it's one of my favorite cars. And to the right of the ambulance, as the ambulance was pulling up, I saw my motorcycle, and it was on the ground. And I remember thinking, what happened to my motorcycle? The next thing I remember was being surrounded by white light. There was no floor, there was no ceiling. I was standing on the air, is the only way I could put it. I felt nothing but love and compassion. I remember seeing myself watching my mother, and she was very young. I remember the car. I remember the make. It was Chevy. And I remember watching her going home, driving to work. I saw her and her family. The next thing I remembered was my father, and I was following him. I was observing them. I remember this. I was observing them. And then I had the thought, I want them as my parents. And the next thing, I was born. Now, my father was abusive, so to come to the realization that I chose my father angered me in the beginning, but it also, in the end, we ended up having a good relationship because I had to take responsibility for picking him. So it changed the dynamics of him and everybody in my life. I also when I was in the hospital, the doctor had left me in the room. I fell apart naturally, and knew that the restaurants were going to be gone and I wouldn't be able to manage them anymore. And I literally howled like, the sound was like I've heard of an injured animal when a bear is shot, and you see movies and you hear that howl. That's how deep and guttural it was. And all of a sudden, I felt this wave come over my body. It felt like an ocean wave just caressing my body. And it felt of unconditional love. I felt calm, I felt peaceful, and all of a sudden I wasn't afraid anymore. I was at peace. And then a man's voice said, "Do what the doctors tell you to do. You're going to be fine." I looked around the room, and there was nobody there. I knew nobody was there. And I knew that I was going to be okay. I just had the sense that everything was going to be all right. I spent 1 month in a multi-trauma unit and 2 years on outpatient therapy. I had to go through speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Basically, I was a child and I had to learn how to talk, walk. I started over from scratch. I studied every day, 7 days a week, comparative religion, Urantia book. I studied. I knew that it was something I had to occupy my time. And I had a great teacher at the time. Her name was Catherine Froggatt. And she ended up ordaining me as a minister. Also, what has come out of this is I see the dead. I have since I was age of 4, but this seems to have heightened it. I saw when I was about a year and a half into the injury. I was visiting my sister. She was doing laundry. She had a basket of laundry she had taken from her bedroom. She was heading towards the laundry room. The spirit of a little girl was following her, and I thought, what is this? And then my sister came back with a load of laundry, and a little girl was following her, and she stopped. And she put her hand on her hip. She looked right straight at me, and she smiled. And I had the sense that that was my niece. This was going to be my niece. So a little while later, I sat my sister down and I said, "You're going to become pregnant, and it's going to be a girl." She became very angry. Her husband was unable to have children. She ended up having a girl. She's exactly as I described. She's now 24 years old. She's amazing. There's many more things that have come out of this, but I have now been able to, because of what I've gone through, and the hardest part of any kind of injury, when you've had to start over from scratch, you either choose to not become victim or lay down and die. Many people that go through a brachial plexus palsy, is what I have, commit suicide because the pain is extremely difficult to deal with. It does literally drive you mad. It's like an impacted tooth constantly. But for me, it's in my right arm, and every step you take, that pounding, that shearing, like a knife running up and down your arm. And then in my back, I am C4, 5, 6, and 7 have been fractured. Lower lumbars, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were also fractured. All of these things, I've learned. I'm an interior designer now. Valentina was my mentor. And since the accident, I've had to learn how to use the left side of my brain because now I'm left-handed. And it's made me more creative. It's brought out the other side of, it's forced the other side of the brain to work. It's been a very interesting journey. There's so much more to tell that has happened, but hopefully I can share this story and much more of it with you if you happen to choose me as this story. Again, my name is Gordon Hall, and thank you for your time.